Disclaimer. This book may contain content that is considered historically inaccurate or culturally insensitive by modern standards. My hope is that by exploring old literature, we will better understand why people of the past thought the way that they did and understand the influences that shape their culture. This video is not intended for young audiences. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I'm excited to read to you from Out of Door Book, which is the 7th book in a series or collection of books called The Children's Hour, which were published by Houghton Mifflin Co. in 1907. The Boy That Stood on the Burning Deck by Charlotte M. Yonge. The Battle of the Nile is one of the exploits to which we look back with the greatest exultation when we think of the triumph of the British flag. Let us think of all that was at stake. Napoleon Bonaparte was climbing to power in France by directing her successful arms against the world. He had beaten Germany and conquered Italy. He had threatened England, and his dream was of the conquest of the East. Like another Alexander, he hoped to subdue Asia and overthrow the hated British power by depriving it of India. Hitherto, his dreams had become earnest by the force of his marvelous genius, and by the ardor which he breathed into the whole French nation. And when he set sail from Toulon with 40,000 tried and victorious soldiers and a magnificent fleet, all were filled with vague and unbounded expectations of almost fabulous glories. He swept away, as it were, the degenerate knights of St. John from the rock of Malta, and sailed for Alexandria in Egypt in the latter end of June 1798. His intentions had not become known, and the English Mediterranean fleet was watching the course of this great armament. Sir Horatio Nelson was in pursuit with the English vessels, and wrote to the First Lord of the Admiralty, "Be they bound to the Antipodes, your lordship may rely that I will not lose a moment in bringing them to action." Nelson had, however, not ships enough to be detached to reconnoitre, and he actually overpassed the French, whom he guessed to be on the way to Egypt. He arrived at the port of Alexandria on the 28th of June, and saw its blue waters and flat coast lying still in their sunny torpor, as if no enemy were on the seas. Back he went to Syracuse, but could learn no more there. He obtained provisions with some difficulty, and then, in great anxiety, sailed for Greece, where at last, on the 28th of July, he learnt that the French fleet had been seen from Candia, steering to the southeast, about 4 weeks since. In fact, it had actually passed by him in a thick haze, which concealed each fleet from the other, and had arrived at Alexandria on the 1st of July, 3 days after he had left it. Every sail was set for the south, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the 1st of August, a very different sight was seen in Aboukir Bay, so solitary a month ago. It was crowded with shipping. Great castle-like men of war rose with all their proud, calm dignity out of the water, their dark portholes opening in the white bands on their sides, and the tricolored flag floating as their ensign. There were 13 ships of the line and 4 frigates, and of these 3 were 80 gunships, and one, towering high above the rest, with her 3 decks, was L'Orient, of 120 guns. Look well at her, for there stands the hero, for whose sake we have chosen this, and no other of Nelson's glorious fights, to place among the setting of our golden deeds. There he is, a little cadet de vaisseau, as the French call a midshipman, only 10 years old, with a heart swelling between awe and exultation at the prospect of his first battle, but fearless and glad, for is he not the son of the brave Casabianca, the flag captain, and is not this Admiral Brueys' own ship, looking down in scorn on the 14 little English ships, not one carrying more than 74 guns, and one only 50? Why Napoleon had kept the fleet there Why Napoleon had kept the fleet there was never known. In his usual mean way of disavowing whatever turned out ill, he laid the blame upon Admiral Brueys, but, though dead men could not tell tales, his papers made it plain that the ships had remained in obedience to commands, though they had not been able to enter the harbor of Alexandria. Large rewards had been offered to any pilot who would take them in, but none could be found who would venture to steer into that port a vessel drawing more than 20 feet of water. They had, therefore, therefore, remained at anchor outside, in Albuquerque Bay, drawn up in a curve along the deepest of the water, with no room to pass them at either end, so that the commissary of the fleet reported that they could bid defiance to a force more than double their number. The admiral believed that Nelson had not ventured to attack him when they had passed by one another a month before, and when the English fleet was signaled, he still supposed that it was too late in the day for an attack to be made. Nelson had, however, no sooner learnt that the French were in sight than he signaled from his ship, the Vanguard, that preparations for battle should be made, and in the meantime summoned up his captains to receive his orders during a hurried meal. He explained that, where there was room for a large French ship to swing, there was room for a small English one to anchor, and, therefore, he designed to bring his ships up the outer part of the French line, and station them close below their adversaries, a plan that he said Lord Hood had once designed, though he had not carried it out. Captain Barry was delighted, and exclaimed, "If we succeed, what will the world say?" "There is no if in the case," returned Nelson. "That we shall succeed is certain. Who may live to tell the tale is a very different question." And when they rose and parted, he said, "Before this time tomorrow I shall have gained a peerage or Westminster Abbey." In the fleet went, through a fierce storm of shot and shell from a French battery in an island in advance. Nelson's own ship, the Vanguard, was the first to anchor within half-pistol shot of the third French ship, the Spartiate. The Vanguard had 6 colors flying, in case any should be shot away, and such was the fire that was directed on her, that in a few minutes every man at the 6 guns in her forepart was killed or wounded, and this happened 3 times. Nelson himself received a wound in the head, which was thought at first to be mortal, but which proved but slight. He would not allow the surgeon to leave the sailors to attend to him till it came to his turn. Meantime, his ships were doing their work gloriously. The Bellerophon was, indeed, overpowered by L'Orient, 200 of her crew killed, and all her masts and cables shot away, so that she drifted away as night came on. But the Swiftsure came up in her place, and the Alexander and Leander both poured in their shot. Admiral Bruce received 3 wounds, but would not quit his post, and at length a 4th shot almost cut him in 2. He desired not to be carried below, but that he might die on deck. About 9 o'clock the ship took fire, and blazed up with fearful brightness, lighting up the whole bay, and showing 5 French ships with their colors hauled down, the others still fighting on. Nelson himself rose, and came on deck when the fearful glow came shining from sea and sky into his cabin, and gave orders that the English boats should immediately be put off for L'Orient, to save as many lives as possible. The English sailors rowed up to the burning ship which they had lately been attacking. The French officers listened to the offer of safety, and called to the little favourite of the ship, the captain's son, to come with them. "No," said the boy. He was where his father had stationed him, and bidden him not to move save at his call. They told him his father's voice would never call him again, for he lay senseless and mortally wounded on the deck, and that the child must presently blow up. "No," said the brave child, "he must obey his father." The moment allowed no delay. The boat put off. The flames showed all that passed in a quivering glare more intense than daylight, and the little fellow was then seen on the deck, leaning over the prostrate figure, and presently tying it to one of the spars of the shivered masts. Just then a thundering explosion shook down to the very hold every ship in the harbor, and burning fragments of L'Orient came falling far and wide, plashing heavily into the water. In the dead, awful stillness that followed the fearful sound, English boats were plying busily about, picking up those who had leapt overboard in time. Some were dragged in through the lower portholes of the English ships, and about 70 were saved altogether. For one moment a boat's crew had a sight of a helpless figure bound to a spar, and guided by a little childish swimmer, who must have gone overboard with his precious freight just before the explosion. They rowed after the brave little fellow, earnestly desiring to save him, but in the darkness, in smoke, and lurid uncertain light, amid hosts of drowning wretches, they lost sight of him again. The boy, oh, where was he? Ask of the winds that far around, with fragments strewed the sea, with mast and helm and pennant fair, that well had borne their part, but the noblest thing that perished there was that young, faithful heart. By sunrise the victory was complete. Nay, as Nelson said, it was not a victory, but a conquest. Only 4 French ships escaped, and Napoleon and his army were cut off from home. These are the glories of our navy, gained by men with hearts as true and obedient as that of the brave child they had tried in vain to save. Yet still, while giving the full meed of thankful, sympathetic honor to our noble sailors, we cannot but feel that the golden deed of Abu fell to that young, faithful heart. Oh, and then I also need to show you this illustration of the Battle of the Nile. Thank you very much for listening to The Boy That Stood on the Burning Deck by Charlotte M. Young with me, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye!